After 2 days of preliminaries, we are down to the final round of the Scripps Presidential Spelling Bee. Getting the finals underway, 69-year-old Donald Trump and your pronouncers, Mark Halperin and John Heilemann.
Donald, congratulations on making it this far. Is there anything you'd like to say before we begin the final round?
So we started off 17 people up on the stage, and what the hell did I know about this stuff? I've never done this before, right?
That's great, Donald. Let's move on. Your word is lying.
Lion. How would you spell that? L-Y-E-N. Lion.
I'm sorry, Donald. That's not quite right. You know what? You're new at this. Would you like to have another try?
Lion, L-Y-I-N apostrophe.
Okay, Donald. We'll accept that.
Donald, your next word is little.
A little. L-I-D-D-L-E. Little. Little.
I'm sorry, Donald. That's incorrect. The correct spelling.
I love you folks, but I can think of places I'd rather be, right?
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming at politics from all directions, north, south, east, and west, as in Wes Anderson. Not exactly that Wes Anderson, but nonetheless. Anyway, stay tuned. But first, we're starting with a word in our spelling bee theme. The word is meh. Meh. Today, Donald J. Trump, billionaire, held a big press conference as he reached the 1,237 delegates he needs to be the Republican nominee. And yet, some mainstream Republicans still are not behind him, endorsing him, supporting him, like New Mexico Governor Susana Martinez, the chair of the Republican Governors Association. And it was Governor Martinez's non-endorsement that led the Donald this week to say that she is, quote, not doing her job in her state. The party's establishment has since then raced to her defense. Paul Ryan, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, Scott Walker, all publicly siding with the governor against the presumptive nominee and in some cases taking swipes at Trump in the process. So, Mark, here's my question. As Trump is in the process of trying to unify the party, this Martinez thing is a specific kind of outburst. I ask you, how big of a problem is this specific thing, but more importantly, what it symbolizes about Trump's approach to the project of unification?
Well, he also yesterday hit Jeb Bush. He hit
Romney, the Penguin. Yeah.
You know, their donors don't like that. They've got donors that he wants to win over. But I actually think, having reflected on this overnight, even in looking at the reaction, I think that the Trump brand is anti-establishment, it's anti-career politician, and it's about strength. And he wants people to get on board. And if people aren't going to get on board, he's going to flick at them. And if they don't come on board, he doesn't think he needs them. So I get the notion that the unity project is important. He's going to get Paul Ryan. He's going to get almost everybody else. If he misses a few and he can still take shots at them, I think it may be good for him.
Well, it's hard for me to see. There's not a world in which I'm going to say that Donald Trump, for basically no reason. Susana Martinez is she's not never Trump. All she's said so far is she wants to wait and see what kind of a nominee he'll be for the people of New Mexico. So she's not one of these people who said, I'll never support him. Unlike Romney, who trashed him. I just don't see a world in which, kind of in an ad hominem way, attacking a Latina governor of New Mexico, a swing state, makes a lot of sense. It doesn't add up for me. I'm sorry.
I'm not saying it's a great idea, and it's kind of rude to go into her state and do that.
Right.
What I'm saying is the Trump brand and Trump's success is
all about attacking the Latina women?
It's based on I just think he doesn't think most people are any idea who Susana Martinez is outside of New Mexico. What I will say.
Well, it's a rather important state, though. It's a state Republicans would like to win.
I don't think they're counting that in their 270 electoral votes. I will just say that Donald Trump, when he has stood up to people and attacked them, with few exceptions, they've eventually come to heel. That's how Trump rolls.
Yeah.
I'm not forgiving it. I'm not saying it's smart. I see the downside. All I'm saying is the notion that this is some sort of disaster, that these press releases are going out saying Susana Martinez are great.
I'll agree with that. That's not a disaster, but I will say, maybe Trump doesn't care about unity. I think deep down he doesn't care that much, and maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but this does not help the unity. If unity is what he's after, this does not help.
All right, our next word is please. In an interview Donald Trump did on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live last night, Kimmel passed along a question from Bernie Sanders asking if Trump would debate Sanders before the California primary. Trump agreed. In response, Sanders tweeted this, quote, "Game on today." Trump sources told CBS News that Trump's comments were meant as a joke and there was going to be no debate. But then At that very long press conference Trump held today in Bismarck, North Dakota, the nominee presumptive said that he would debate Sanders for a price.
Oh, I'd love to debate Bernie. He's a dream. Well, I said last night on Jimmy's show, it was, a question that was posed, and I said I'd love to debate him, but I want a lot of money to be put up for charity. So what we'll do is if we can raise for maybe women's health issues or something, if we can raise $10 or $15 million for charity, which would be a very appropriate amount. I understand the television business very well. I think it would get very high ratings. It should be in a big arena somewhere, and we could have a lot of fun with it. I'd love to debate Bernie, actually. I mean, the problem with debating Bernie, he's going to lose, because honestly, his system is rigged.
So Trump said that the debate will happen if someone is able to raise $10 million or more, for which for our viewers at home would mean 370 donations at $27 a pop. Trump also said that he would hope the money would go to a charitable organization, such as charities supporting women's health. So we're going to have Jeff Weaver on, Sanders' campaign manager, a little bit later in the program to talk about where the negotiations, if there are any, stand. But what do you think the chances are this will happen? And if they do, who does it help? Who does it hurt?
I do not have the faintest idea of whether this is likely to happen, but God, please let it be so. I think it would be an incredible spectacle, because I think some of the problems that Sanders has as a debater against a very prepared, predictable, strong, normal debater like Hillary Clinton would go away in this situation. And Sanders has a lot at stake here, right? He would take this seriously because he's trying to prove to people that he would be a better general election nominee against Trump. So he'd go in armed for bear, and Trump always goes in armed for bear. So I think it'd be the first time you'd see a genuine Lincoln Douglas style debate, and it'd be a free-for-all.
Well, I don't think it'd be Lincoln Douglas style, but
well,
I do.
You know what I mean?
I do think. And
just two guys, two on stage, different parties.
I'm deeply skeptical that Trump in the end is going to do this, because it's a little bit of a risk, and things are going well for him now. I do think it'd be great for Sanders. I think it'd be bad for Hillary Clinton, because she would be blotted out of the news for weeks or whenever, for days. And I think that potentially it'd be good for Trump, because he could be up against the socialists and define himself, move more to the center. So maybe it'll happen, but the whole price tag thing, Trump has said this before.
Yes.
He seemed to suggest at one point today that the money needs to come from a television network. I don't think a television network would do that, but maybe, because it would be a huge spectacle and it would be an incredible pregame for what we expect to be Clinton-Trump debates later this year.
If I were in charge of a television network and Donald Trump said that I had to take $15 million out of what my advertising haul was going to be from this debate, I'd make that deal in a heartbeat. I don't know if anybody will, but I would make that deal. I don't know. You're right. With Trump, there's so much. I mean, again, just in the last day, I'll do it. And then as people are saying, no, it's a joke. And then people's going, who knows if, again. But I really think the key here is what you said a second ago, which is it would really, it would be terrible for Hillary Clinton if this happened. I mean, it would just be like a terrible thing, because you'd really get to see.
I'll tell you one thing. Bernie Sanders off of that debate would raise a lot of money.
Another reason to be bad for Hillary Clinton. All right, our next word is shakeup. Shakeup. Last night, Donald Trump's campaign sent out a press release announcing that it was cutting ties with National Political Director Rick Wiley 6 weeks after Wiley joined the campaign. The campaign says that Wiley was always going to be a temporary hire. Others say that's not so, and that he was actually fired. And even more say, a lot of reporting suggests that this is part of a huge internal turf war happening in Trump's world. So here's my question mark about this. I'm forgetting about whether Rick Wiley, not going to make or break this campaign, any one individual. But my question for you is, to the extent that it reflects disarray and internal chaos within Trump's world, how big a problem is that for his candidacy?
I think there's some basic stuff they need to get done, organizing the states. There's some basic stuff they need to get done in terms of fundraising. And I think having professionals around is helpful. But Trump, manages the way he manages. He's got loyalty to people who've been loyal to him. I think in the end, if you said to me, what are the 5 biggest dangers to Trump potentially winning? This is one of them. Just having a system, of a team that is close, has each other's backs, and can build what needs to be built. Take the money in, spend it efficiently. So I think it's a bad sign for him. And I think that as we learn more about his management style, this does not speak well of what kind of president he would be, because the backbiting, the leaks, the personal attacks, it's quite something. It's reminiscent, if dare I say it, of a Clinton campaign.
Well, yes, of a Hillary Clinton campaign, but not the Bill Clinton campaign. I mean, you think about who's won. There was a lot of chaos in the 1992 campaign. There was a lot, especially early on. But eventually they became quite cohesive. The Bush campaign, quite cohesive. The Obama campaign, quite cohesive. I actually don't think it applies at all to the presidency, because I think you could see in some of these cases, like Barack Obama, who ran a very, very tight ship and then had a lot of management trouble in the Oval Office and in the White House, it doesn't really apply. But it does help you win an election when you have a small cadre of people who are all really united and have the confidence of the principal. That does help you when it gets tough in a fall campaign.
I'll tell you what does carry over to my mind. You've got clear tensions in the campaign of senior people inside and outside the campaign leaking on each other, attacking each other, criticizing each other, not showing each other a lot of respect. That, if you have that in the White House, that is just deadly. Yeah. And I see no indication from all my reporting and what I've read that Trump has any desire or interest in trying to tamp it down.
Fix it, right?
Calling everybody in the room and saying no more, no more. And the Clinton campaign has been remarkably relatively
This Clinton campaign.
This Clinton campaign, relatively
totally
free.
Yeah.
All right, the Democratic presidential race in detail. Clinton, Sanders. That fight's still going on. We'll talk about it right after this. State Department Inspector General report on Hillary Clinton's use of a personal email server is still the talk of many towns, including the town of Brooklyn, USA, the town of Manhattan, and the town of Washington, D.C., maybe some others. Today, Bloomberg Politics and Purple Strategies have a new poll out. It was taken before that email report was released. It shows that Clinton is slightly leading Trump amongst Rust Belt voters in the question of who is more trustworthy. Clinton leads 29-23. 48%, though, say they're unsure which of the two are more trustworthy. Today, Clinton has been addressing with the press the IG report. Here's one thing she said to a reporter earlier today.
This report makes clear that personal email use was the practice for other secretaries of state. And I know that because it is well known, it's pointed out in the report. But it was still a mistake. And as I've said many times, if I could go back, I would do it differently. I know people have concerns about this.
So, John, she's been doing a round of interviews, some in just the last few minutes that we're looking at what she said. But how effective has she and her campaign been in this last day in neutralizing the negative impact of this report?
Well, let us first observe the fact that she is out there answering these questions herself indicates to me quite strongly that Brooklyn believes that they have not been effective enough, because if they could handle this with surrogates, they would not have Hillary Clinton out doing interviews trying to answer these questions. So they feel as though they're not doing a strong enough job. I think, you know, that in the end that they're doing what they always do. They're obfuscating, they're practicing misdirection, they're not addressing a lot of the central claims, and they're sometimes lying openly about things that are in this IG report. But politically, it may work.
I agree with Joe Scarborough. I think she needs to just tell the truth about what happened. And she said she was cooperating with the investigations, and they didn't cooperate with the IG. They're saying so many things now, and I respect them as professionals trying to do their jobs. Right. But they're saying so many things now that are spin, that are not responsive to what's in the report. And the fact that she and her aides did not cooperate with the investigation to say, well, we wanted to focus on the FBI investigation. I mean, you know, this is cable, but I can't say what I think of that. It's not the right thing to do. She made a mistake. She should own up to it. And the suspicions, the latest thing, as the AP has now pointed out, is some of the emails that are most interesting in this report
Which we've never seen before.
That we've never seen before. And her claim that almost all the emails that were supposed to be handed over were archived in the system that she used to email to people on the government system, it's just wrong.
Well, the IG report says there's 3 months, the first 3 months are missing. No one has the first 3 months.
But the reports about her not wanting a government email, you know, when it asked to start one, and 2 emails about the server being potentially hacked. These are problems, and I think they're doing their best today, but you know, they're not going with the truth. They're not trying to get all the truth out there.
All right. On the other side of the Pacific today, President Obama was over at the G7 summit in Japan doing president-ish and actually presidential things. But speaking to reporters, of course, the topic of the 2016 race came up, and the president, as we say in this business, took le bait.
They are paying very close attention to this election. I think it's fair to say that they are surprised by the Republican nominee. They are not sure how seriously to take some of his pronouncements, but they're rattled by him. A lot of the proposals that he's made display either ignorance of world affairs or a cavalier attitude.
So Trump, as is his wont, responded to President Obama and said that, rattling is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, sometimes rattling the cages can be, quote, a good thing. So, Mark, this is not the first time that President Obama has weighed in on this presidential race, and it will not be the last. But on this notion that Trump is creating tremors around the world, is that an argument that will necessarily hurt Trump, or is there some way in which Trump can jujitsu that and actually make it a political asset?
Oh, I think we agree on this. They will side, Trump's coalition, if he can build a majority coalition, will side with him over world leaders saying we don't like his unpredictable, because people are not happy with the status quo of America's relations around the world. President Obama's approval rating, little over 50, makes this a different dynamic. It allows him to go out there and hit Trump. There's no doubt that world leaders and diplomats across the globe are freaked out by the prospect of Donald Trump. Not all of them, but many of them.
Many.
But I don't think this is one where I think Donald Trump's instincts will help him. Hillary Clinton, I think, will not want to fight this election out on this train. She will want to undermine Trump as being not ready to be commander in chief. Yeah. But I don't think foreign leaders testifying to that is going to hurt him very much.
Well, I agree with that in Maine. But I do think, look, if part of what the Clinton argument against Trump is he's not ready to be commander in chief. He's obviously disqualified. He's temperamentally unsuited to the office. Pointing to Tony Blair, or not Tony Blair, but pointing to David Cameron, or pointing to Justin Trudeau or whoever, that's not going to win you any points. But is there part of a larger picture? Like if there's a sense that, again, persuadable voters in the middle of the electorate, if there's a sense that the whole world is freaking out about Trump, if they have that sense in a visceral way, is that something that might cause them to have some doubts about making him commander-in-chief? I think it might in the long run if it builds over the course of the next few months.
I am really interested to see.
Not Barack Obama just saying it.
I'm very interested
to
see if Hillary Clinton can win the foreign policy argument with Donald Trump, because she should be able to on paper. It's going to be interesting to watch.
So far, the polling suggests she is, except on terrorism.
Yep. All right. Who has the hardest job in America? Find out after these words from our sponsors.
Joining us now is Bloomberg Businessweek's Josh Green, whose latest cover story is on the cover of that very magazine. It's called How to Get Trump Elected When He's Wrecking Everything You Built. It's a day in the life of RNC Chairman Reince Priebus as he works towards unifying his party and contending with his rather unpredictable standard bearer. Josh, welcome to the show. You spent time with Reince Priebus and with Donald Trump, so I just want to know, what is going on in the heads of these two guys about each other?
Well, they put up a great front. They said they talk every day by phone. Trump was very complimentary toward Priebus. Priebus was very deferential toward Trump. But it's clear that both of them are kind of struggling to pull in a slightly different direction. Priebus had the RNC autopsy, which after Mitt Romney's loss in 2012, which famously was meant to kind of moderate the party's image. I think had a different type of candidate in mind than a Donald Trump. But Trump came in and he won with a distinct set of policies and attitudes that are different. And now he's the nominee, and that's the direction it looks like the party's going to go in.
So when there's a presumptive nominee in either party, there's kind of basically the uniform relationship between the campaign and the party regarding the convention, fundraising, strategy. Is this a conventional relationship, or is that remains to be seen?
I think every Trump relationship is an unconventional relationship in politics. But the one-on-one Priebus-Trump relationship does seem to be fairly strong. There has been some fraying. Rick Wiley, RNC veteran, as you guys know, Trump's national political director, is suddenly out of the campaign.
Very close to Chairman Priebus.
Very close to Chairman Priebus, so maybe that's a sign of discord. But at least in the way they speak about each other, very polite, very professional, seem to have a good working relationship. And I think also Trump understands to an extent that he's going to need to rely on the RNC's technology, staff, etc., if he's going to have a shot to win.
Trump talks a good game. Sometimes he may not actually respect someone, but says he does because it's in his interest. Do you think he genuinely respects Priebus? Tick-tock, tick-tock. It's a hard question to answer. I don't know the answer.
Can I use a lifeline?
Yeah. Well,
you just can't tell, or
I think he does. Yeah. I think he does. But I think he also doesn't want there to be any doubt about who is in charge, and Donald Trump is in charge.
Yeah.
So I was struck by your interactions with both of them in the piece, and particularly struck by your interactions. We'll talk about Trump in a second, but the chairman got kind of upset with you on multiple occasions in the course of these interviews. So what were he seemed sensitive to some of the things you were saying, and he seemed to kind of fly off the handle in a way that Priebus doesn't normally do. So just talk about what were the things you were challenging him on that caused him to kind of fly off the handle a little bit.
Well, basically, I mean, his great vision was, in order to keep up with the demographic changes in America, we need to broaden our appeal to women, minorities, young people. And I said to him, look, you've got a nominee who has said that Barack Obama isn't born in America, who's called Mexicans rapists and drug dealers. Doesn't that fly in the face of the very thing that you're trying to accomplish? And I think he's under a lot of pressure, and I think he does understand that that's a problem for the future of the party, maybe for the president of the party too, and didn't really appreciate the line of questioning. I don't think.
Your interaction with Trump were much more cordial, and Trump seemed to be he extended the interview and had you stay longer than you were planning to stay. Yeah. You asked him what he envisioned for the future of the Republican Party a few years down the line. What did he tell you?
Well, basically the idea was, there are two different directions the party could potentially go, in Priebus's direction and Trump's direction. And Trump had said essentially that I want to put my stamp on the Republican Party the same way I put my Trump brand on a building. It's going to be a workers' party, he said. It's a movement, echoing Bernie Sanders. But he wants to get people wage increases, and he just has a more, I think, populist, confrontational vision of where the Republican Party is going than maybe the one that you saw outlined in the touchy-feely autopsy.
And as I read the piece, I wasn't there for the interview, but as I read the piece, based on other conversations I've had with Trump, tell me if I'm right, he's kind of more thoughtful than some of his critics about the place of the party, the mood of the country, what he could actually accomplish, right? You weren't talking to Norman Ornstein, but you were having a thoughtful conversation.
That is a terrific point. He is a very shrewd analyst. I mean, he basically saw what was missing in the Republican sales pitch, and he supplied it and took over the party. But I think the other thing he's good about was there's a scene in the piece that takes you inside the Donald Trump-Paul Ryan meeting, where Trump essentially reads Ryan the Riot Act and says, look, we are not going to go cut entitlements, try and sell that in an election when the Democrats are talking about expanding entitlements. And I think you see there his political instincts kicking in and saying, look, this is not the way to go. We're going to go this way. Now, whether or not he can win, I don't know. But I think he's got a shrewder diagnosis of what ails the Republican Party, or what has in the past, than a lot of professional Republicans.
And what ails America, and how the Republican Party can be the thing that people turn to, right?
I agree entirely, yeah. And I don't think he gets, there's so much attention paid to the insults and the feuds that I don't think people actually look at the fact that he has articulated a clear set of ideas that Republican voters have rallied around.
Yeah.
Priebus think is actually in his heart kind of making peace with this? Real short. No, not making peace. No. Still in rebellion.
No, he talks about drinking at breakfast.
Yes,
that's probably not a sign.
Telltale sign.
Bailey's on the cornflakes. All right, I do that all the time, so I don't know what that means. But anyway, Josh Green, awesome story. Everybody read it in Business Week. Up next, we got Bernie Sanders campaign manager Jeff Weaver joining us. We'll get his take on the possible Trump-Sanders mega debate right after this. Hillary Clinton today hit the airwaves with MSNBC's Chuck Todd and CNN, saying that the rules about email were not clarified until after she left the State Department, the rules that she was operating under. And also she said that everything she said already, everything she could possibly say on the matter. So joining us now, in the wake of this big Democratic story, is High Definition. The campaign manager for Bernie Sanders, that would be Jeff Weaver, who's coming to us, as I said a second ago, in High Definition. Jeff, thank you for joining us in High Definition from Burlington, Vermont.
Great to be here.
The obvious question and the inescapable question at hand, please give us everything you know, all the details, secret, otherwise, about the current state of the Trump-Sanders debate negotiations.
And you'd like me to name names as well?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah,
everything you know.
What I would say about this is this would be a phenomenal opportunity for the American people to see two different visions on stage together, one-on-one, and let the American people to decide which vision they support, Donald Trump's tax cuts for the rich, low wages, climate change is a hoax made up by the Chinese,
right,
or Bernie Sanders dealing with wealth and income inequality, health care for all, and tuition-free public colleges and universities.
So
let's see which one of those prevails.
Jeff, are there negotiations underway? And if so, what are the state of them?
Well, there has been some behind-the-scenes talks about the possibility of this happening. I think there's probably a division on the other side about whether it should go forward. Clearly, Donald Trump last night said that he would like to debate Bernie Sanders, repeated it today. We hope that he does not chicken out, that he has the courage to get up on stage and stand by his positions.
Jeff, when you say there have been behind-the-scenes talk, do you mean there have been direct contacts between people on the Sanders campaign and on the Trump campaign?
I would say that's a yes.
Okay.
Jeff, it seems like you agree with us. It's in your interest to get this thing to happen. But you're a busy man. How much time are you going to invest in trying to pull this off? And when will you know if it's real?
Well, I would hope we would know very soon. Obviously, the California primary is coming up. It would be best for the people of California to have this debate beforehand. And like I said, I think this would be a real clash of ideas and substance, and I think a real opportunity for people in California and the rest of the country.
Your candidate famously said early on in the contest that he didn't care much about Hillary Clinton's darn emails. I
think it was damn emails.
Yeah, it was. I was trying to quote Paul Ryan. He likes the word darn. If in the wake of the IG report, is there anything you think voters should look at that report and say, as they compare Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, here's what they should think anew about Hillary Clinton based on the report?
Well, I think the report speaks for itself, and Bernie Sanders has been very clear that he wants to have a campaign on the substance of issues. This process is still going on. There's an FBI investigation, obviously, and I think what he has said and what he's standing by is that we should let that process play itself out, and then
right. But the report doesn't totally speak for itself. Is there something in it you would point voters, Democratic voters in California, New Jersey, and elsewhere, and say, we think this is what you should take away from it, or you simply want to let voters read it themselves and make their own conclusions?
Yes, let voters read it for themselves. There's enough differences between Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton on substance that they can make a decision between the two. That you have differences on minimum wage, on health care, on foreign policy. So I think there's plenty out there on which people can make a decision. And if people want to read this report, they certainly welcome to.
Jeff.
But the process is not yet complete with respect to emails.
Jeff, you're a voter and a citizen, right? So, there's two different ways of looking at this report, broadly speaking. Some people think it's damning and scathing, and that it comes down very hard on Secretary Clinton, raises questions about her judgment at a minimum. Other people, especially people in the Clinton campaign, say, hey, look, there's nothing to see here. This is of no consequence whatsoever. There's no news here, and it basically exonerates her. As a voter, as a citizen of the United States of America, I know you've read the report, so what's your judgment about which of those is more broadly true?
Well, my opinion of it really doesn't matter. What matters is what people who read it themselves think. I know. Well, I appreciate that, too. But I think if people want to read it, they can go ahead, make their own conclusions. But this whole investigation of the emails is not over with yet. And I think, as the senator said, we want to let the process play itself out, and then people can make a decision.
But Jeff,
from there.
it's clear that your posture is no longer the posture of Senator Sanders, which was originally, no one cares about your damn emails. You're now saying, look, voters should read this report and come to their own conclusions. That it's at least important enough that you're pushing them in that direction, as opposed to saying, this is irrelevant, let's get on to other issues.
I think you're overreading what I just said. What Bernie Sanders is concerned about is the substantive differences between himself and Secretary Clinton. If there's an issue of judgment that he's concerned about, it's her judgment in voting for the Iraq War and carrying on with a very hawkish foreign policy since then, having not learned the lessons of that war.
Jeff, go back to the possible Trump-Sanders debate, or as you like to call it, the Sanders-Trump debate. Are you the main point of contact with the Trump campaign?
Well, I don't really want to name names. I know you'd like me to name names, but I haven't up to this point, and I think the discussions are at a point where it'd be more helpful if names weren't sort of discussed.
Tell people about the historical relationship between your colleague Tad Devine and the chairman of the Trump campaign, Paul Manafort.
Well, I know they've worked together on at least one international project, so they do have a relationship.
And is that helping make this more likely to happen?
Well, that's just another way of you asking me to name names.
Well, no, I'm just asking if the fact that there's a relationship that exists at the high levels of the two campaigns, you think makes it more likely that negotiations could be concluded successfully.
Well, I think it makes it more likely that negotiations will happen.
Jeff,
I obviously, at this point, I really can't speak to whether they'll be successful or not. I mean, I do think ultimately the question is does Donald Trump, have the sort of courage to get up there on stage with Bernie Sanders one-on-one? I mean, that's really the ultimate question.
You think calling him a chicken is making it more likely to happen?
I don't know, but the ultimate question here is about fortitude, really. And chickening out, I think, is not a good option.
Jeff, let me ask you about the upcoming Democratic National Convention. There's a story in the New York Times about the possibility of a platform fight over the Democratic position with respect to Israel and the Palestinians. You guys have put Cornel West and James Zogby on the platform committee as your representatives. A lot of people consider that a kind of provocative thing to do. And when I say a lot of people, I mean certainly people in the Clinton camp and some number of Democrats who think those two guys are likely to stir up some degree of debate and contentiousness and trouble. Would you guys have any concerns about that as sending a signal that you guys are not coming to make peace, but are coming to make a fight?
No, I don't think so. I think there's going to be a number of discussions about the platform. There may be disagreements. There'll obviously be votes on the platform committee. If there are platform points that the senator loses on the platform committee that he thinks might be better brought to the floor, that's always a possibility.
But you don't see those two appointments as being, again, if someone said to you, those two individuals seem like provocative appointments, you would say what?
No, I would say absolutely not. I think that there's a broad range of views in the Democratic Party. I think both of those gentlemen are highly qualified to be on that platform drafting committee. There are going to be a number of hearings around the country, and I think that the more views that are expressed and put into the platform, in the platform discussion, I think is the better for the party.
18 months ago, did Bernie Sanders know who Jimmy Kimmel was?
Yes, he did. Yes.
He did. Okay. Just checking.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Tonight's a big night.
I would say yes.
Okay.
It is a big night, absolutely.
All right. Jeff Weaver, thank you for coming on today. Always good to see you, especially up there in what is apparently a very sunny Burlington, Vermont. Coming up next, who is a little rusty in their fight to win over the Rust Belt states? We'll answer that question and more right after this.
Hot off the presses, the latest Bloomberg Politics Purple Strategies poll. It tests general election polling. It's slice polling, we call it. This one focusing on middle-income voters in the Rust Belt. The states we looked at were Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all being targeted by the Trump campaign. Middle-class voters in these states are, a very key demographic for both the Trump campaign and Hillary Clinton as they prepare to try to win 270 electoral votes. Joining us now to talk about the findings in this survey, Doug Usher, the managing partner of Purple Strategies, our polling partner, and Doug joins us from the Washington Bureau. So, Doug, let's just talk about the overall top-line number about support between Clinton and Trump for this very key middle-income Rust Belt demo.
Well, the good news for Clinton here is that she's got a lead. She's leading by 7 points. And what's important about this demographic is it's a true swing demographic. If you look at elections from 1992 through 2008, every single election, that the winner carried this group nationally. And in these states where we looked, where we can look at that data, the winner carried that demographic as well. So right now, in this key swing demographic, Clinton's up with a bit of good news for her, up by 7 points.
So, Doug, let's break it down a little bit further and look at a couple of key segments here. We want to talk about white voters, we want to talk about female voters, we want to talk about independents. So give us the breakdown on those. Those are pretty important groups.
Absolutely, and what we see is some real polarization here. Among women, Clinton is leading by strong double digits, and among men, Trump is leading. He has a slight lead among independents as well. And then if you take a look at race, it's a substantial issue. We have white voters supporting him, but minority voters, she has a strong double-digit lead. So when you take a look at the election, in a lot of ways, this group, this key swing group, is mirroring a lot of the demographic differences we're seeing nationally. Currently, the result on the top line works in Clinton's favor, but we'll see if there's some swings, particularly after recent news over the coming weeks.
So, Doug, in the data you just ran through regarding whites, women, and independents, if you were Trump, what would make you happiest about it?
Well, the thing that would make me happy is that I'm leading, particularly among independents. That's obviously something that's going to be critical. And within this group of swing voters, of middle-income voters, he wants to be winning that group. Having said that, I think he should be a little bit concerned that he's not dominating among white voters in these key Rust Belt states, and that's Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. In the end, a lot of the theory of this race is that Trump can cut into either traditionally Democratic constituencies or in swing constituencies in a way that can take away states that have traditionally gone Democratic by cutting into those groups. This sort of brings up the point that maybe that's not going to be so easy, and perhaps more important, that he may have to build a more traditional Republican coalition of evangelicals and that type of group rather than cutting into traditional Democratic strongholds.
So, Doug, let's talk about a little bit about how these voters see Trump and Clinton as potential commanders-in-chief. There's an interesting kind of contradiction in the data, right, that we've seen in other places about how they see who's better on foreign policy and then who's better on terrorism. Talk about that contradiction and how it works to different candidates' advantage.
That's right. When you take a look at having the right temperament to successfully execute foreign policy, Clinton has an unbelievable advantage with over half supporting her, a 20-point lead, plus-point lead over Trump. But then, when you take a look at who would be the strongest against terrorism, fighting terrorism here and abroad, Trump has a lead. And if you look throughout the poll, the thing that is really harming Trump more than anything is his temperament, is how he behaves. That cuts through not just with foreign policy, but also on some very specific negatives. The strongest negative we tested against him was how he behaves towards women, the types of language he uses. And when you put that all together, the things that make Trump Trump and have got him a lot of support are also the things that right now are sort of the difficulty for him and things he needs to overcome, even with this key demographic that people say are going to swing towards Trump.
So, Doug, he's behind with this group, and that's obviously a snapshot of where we are today. If it is the case that the Trump Electoral College strategy involves winning some number of these 4 important states, does the data suggest it's within reach and that's a sensible route, or should he go back to more of a Florida, Colorado strategy that the Romney folks had?
You know, from a strategic perspective, even with the numbers where they are today, they can, of course, move. That's first. Second is, I can't imagine that they would give up on states like this, because if you tell people that you're not going to fight in states like this, that gives the opponent the advantage. I certainly don't think it's hopeless here for Trump. I think there's a lot of opportunity. One thing that was really striking in this poll is that 75% of voters, and it's true across party, majorities across party, think to improve the direction of the country, we need to have major changes in the way government does business. Not just changes, but major changes. Even Democrats agree with that. And Trump, of course, when it comes to changing the way Washington works, has a huge advantage over Clinton. So when you put those two things together, leaving the stylistic differences aside for a minute, Trump has a major advantage that he can use moving forward. So I do think there's a lot of room for him to grow here, despite trailing at this point.
Okay, Doug Usher, thanks very much. Great poll. We'll have more slicing and dicing coming up throughout the year. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Wes Anderson, Republican strategist. Don't forget, if you're watching us in Washington, D.C., you can now listen to us on the radio anytime on Bloomberg 99.1 FM every day. We'll be right back.
It's time now for a conversation regarding the race for president in the Republican Party. And joining us is Wes Anderson, famous Republican pollster. I hope you all are getting like the Wes Anderson jokes that we've been doing through this whole show, because that was really one of them. Wes, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You work for Governor Jindal in this presidential race. That did not go terribly well.
As planned, no.
How surprised are you at, again, we'll start 30,000 feet. How surprised are you that Donald Trump is the nominee of the Republican Party?
Well, you know, I think if you'd asked me that a year ago and asked me to put money down, I would have lost that bet. And I think almost every Republican pollster would have. So the entire thing is surprising. In the last 3 months, 4 months, not at all surprising.
And you are currently, just for the record, you are with Mr. Trump, or you are still in the holdout category?
No, I'm going to vote for him, and with all the caveats that a bunch of Republicans like myself would give.
But vote for him enthusiastically, happily, or with great reservations and a sense of ambivalence?
I think the point is I'm going to vote against Hillary Clinton, and I think that there is a chance that a majority of the voters in the United States are going to do that. And that's probably as enthusiastic as I can get. I still have reservations, but I think that there's an awful lot of voters like myself. We see it in our own polling who are trending Trump's way. Hillary's real opponent is not Donald Trump. It's 50%. With the exception of a handful of outliers in March, she hasn't broken 50 in any credible national surveys in almost a year. And she's, I can't imagine that there's anything that she can say or do between now and in November that's going to change any significant block of voters' opinion of her.
And it's more dire for her than it would be for Trump because she's a quasi-incumbent and she's the incumbent party.
Oh, yeah. No, it absolutely is. Recent
because he's not broken 50 either.
No, absolutely not. But here's, we can come up with a laundry list, a mile long of why there's no chance in the world that Trump is going to win this race. Except all the national polling right now is converging into the margin of error in the mid 40s, and he absolutely can win this race. One of the things that we found, we just recently did a large battleground survey for presidential swing states, and we found that yes, both of them are wildly upside down on image, the unfaves versus the favorables, but Trump more so. And when you look at his unfaves, you think there's no chance. This can't possibly be that. Then when we do the ballot test in the battleground, and he's down 2 points.
People are willing to vote for him even though they don't like him.
Well, here's the deal. People talk about how upside down both of them are on image. We like to get gradation on that. We'd like to get a little more granular. So we ask, are you very unfavorable towards them or just somewhat unfavorable? We euphemistically refer to the very unfavorable as the hate line. And the most telling demographic in our crosstab in every survey from now to November is going to be those folks who say that they are very unfavorable towards both candidates. That's about 20% in the battleground. It's who those folks are that's really interesting. And these are rough numbers, and it changes state to state, but if you aggregate them, only about 10% of them are Democrats. And most of them are under 35, and most of them are Sanders supporters. And do they come home? Do they hold their nose and go home? Probably, but they're young, so a chunk of them may just bail out. I don't know what percentage.
You wrote a piece not long ago that argued that the much vaunted and much relied upon among Democrats demographic advantages that President Obama in his last 2 elections and that Democrats more broadly at the presidential level have enjoyed is not an insurmountable structural disadvantage to Republicans. That counters a lot of conventional wisdom, not just in the Democratic Party, but in the Republican Party, too. Why do you think that?
Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, President Obama was the first president since modern record keeping has existed in national elections to win re-election with fewer raw votes than he did his first time around. You have to go back to FDR's third race where that was the case, and there were several million Americans overseas engaged in a little thing called World War II, so I don't think we'll put a big giant asterisk on that. So it hasn't ever really happened before since modern record keeping has been kept.
Suggesting that the coalition is not ascending, but rather declining.
That's right. But he loses.
Or just suggest that Barack Obama's first election, there was massive turnout and there was a huge swell for his first African-American president.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. But he loses significantly while he's getting fewer votes than he did the first time around. I mean, he loses by 4 points, which in these days is in the last 20 years it would be a landslide.
I don't even understand what you mean.
He loses to. I'm sorry. Romney loses significantly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Romney loses significantly. So how is it possible that you have Barack Obama winning significantly while he's getting fewer votes than he did the first go around? And the answer, I think that the on my side and on the Democrat side, the attempt to look for all those answers in demography is an attempt to make an excuse for what was obvious, and that was that our candidate did not inspire the coalition he needed to inspire. The one quick note on that, doing some corporate work in September of 12, doing focus groups of swing voters in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. heard two things in those focus groups that were just amazing to me. It's all swing voters. One was
we only have one. We have time for one.
All right. The one was a lady said to me, I said, so you don't like him? She said, I think the thing is he doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Wes Anderson, thank you. We're going to have you back and talk in more detail about that thesis because I think it's really interesting. Coming up, what Donald Trump just did to celebrate reaching the magic 1237 right after this.
Trump classic, he's loving it. Mr. Trump just tweeted himself, quote, celebrating 1237, showing him eating some McDonald's. Anyway,
McDonald's.
Head to BloombergPolitics.com for more on our Rust Belt Purple Slice poll. And coming up here on Bloomberg TV, Emily Chang speaks to the co-founder of Grab. Till tomorrow, sayonara.